ended up going on a cruise with him. His girlfriend had bailed, and he had a spot open, and I went on the cruise and took some pills, and the crazy thing happened. We went to Mexico. A hurricane came. It diverted us to Mexico from the Bahamas, and we went to the pharmacy, bought a bunch of Somas and Valium, right? We went back to the room, and he's like, well, let's just take a couple and take a nap, and then we'll wake up and go do whatever. So he took a couple. I took a shit ton. And the next,
I know how to do these.
Yeah.
Couple
With it, yeah.
miles.
And the next thing I know, I'm waking up. I have a feel. I'm hurting down low. I'm like, oh, something's hurting. I wake up. I'm on a cold bench in the bottom of a ship on a cruise, and they're pulling the catheter out. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I guess, I didn't wake up. And he was slapping me, and he said my eyes were open, and he took me put me in the shower, like all the things that, anyways.
Yeah.
So it went bad from there, and that was 2011, and it was all the way until 2017 is when I got clean, May 5th, 2017.
Welcome to the Success Journey podcast. Thank you for being on the Success Journey to name the podcast. Almost every podcast we've done, we have had to rename it, or we did rename it. And so we have settled on the Success Journey podcast. So I'm excited for this to be the first Success Journey podcast because prior we've had different names. So we've settled on the Success Journey podcast. Got with me co-host Mr. Jason Hershey. Got a special guest, Mr. Greg Ence with Greg Ence Realty.
Greg Ence Real Estate right there.
Greg Ence Real Estate, my bad.
That's all right, representing.
Yeah, representing on the Stanley Cup. So excited to have you on, man.
Me
Welcome.
too. Thank you.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
We met, it was the beginning of the year. I got invited, I think it was the beginning of the year.
December,
okay. End of last year. I got invited to something I knew very little about, just basically these videos of dudes getting beat up and getting like it's a hard workout and getting yelled at and dudes crying and I was like, that seems like right up my alley. I like to cry and get beat up, so let's roll.
Yeah.
So I signed up and I got to meet you there, got to meet a lot of awesome people and went there just for a few days. Really, it felt to me like almost like a sobering experience, like not like from alcohol or drugs or anything, but just an experience to be like, kind of detach and look at my life from a 50-foot view. And it was cool to meet you and a lot of other people there that were on the same path of just wanting to get better. And so anyway, that's where we first met. I connected with you, realized we worked out at the same gym. Now I see you there doing leg day every day, getting those legs big and strong.
He's only saying that because I complimented his legs today as I rolled up, and I told him how small my legs are and how great his legs are looking. So we'll put that out there.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is actually the longest time I've talked to you, and I'm excited to get to know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, kids, family, obviously what you do for work,
of course,
professionally, stuff like that.
I want to touch on one thing from the event, from the breath work that we did. If you've never done breath work, you got to try it, man.
Sell Jason on it, I'm working on that.
And just going with an open mind. Oh,
Pull that up closer to your face.
there we go.
You got to get up in it.
Okay, I got to get up in it. Okay, so you got to go with an open mind as well.
That's my problem.
Yeah, I'm the type of person that I don't like to give up control, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. You're laying there. You have your mouth wide open. You're breathing in your lungs, out your belly. I can't remember how you do it. There's three motions to it, right? And you get to a point. I get to a point where I'm so scared, and I don't want to let go. I'm fighting it. I'm like, oh my gosh! And then finally, someone in the group. I don't know if it was your group or the time before. They went started screaming, and I'm like, oh my gosh! It gave me permission to start screaming too. And then as soon as I did that, I was able to relax, and I just started bawling. I just laid there and felt all this shame and stuff started leaving my body because I was focused on, I was picturing my younger self, and just, it was amazing. Jenna, the girl that did it, at least at the event we went, is amazing. I would do it like she can do in video or anything else, but for me, it's been life changing because I've been able to tap into different areas, release feelings and I don't know, what is it, energy that has been stuck to me for, I don't say a lifetime, but maybe even a lifetime.
Yeah.
So went off on a little tangent there. So I expect when you're going to do this tomorrow, next time. Just kidding.
I'm all over it.
All over it. Put you on the spot there. It's worth it though. Back to your question, myself, Greg Ence. I was born and raised here in Santa Clara in St. George, and I have a 19-month-old. I'm 40. What am I? 44. Have a girlfriend. We have a house. We just built a house a year and a half ago. She's got a 5-year-old, and we have a 15-year-old there. And myself, my profession is in real estate. I'm also in construction. We own a bounce house business off to the side. And I just love being here. I've moved away a few times. I don't know if are you from here? No, you're from up.
I moved down here a year ago from Salt Lake.
From Salt Lake, okay.
Yeah, followed him.
But you're from? Are you not from Hurricane?
No, I'm from Vegas.
Really? I thought you were. Yeah. I would have guessed a Hershey from Hurricane.
No,
okay.
No relation. So my grandpa is from Rockville.
Okay.
Moved to Cedar and then moved to Vegas back in the 50s.
Got it.
And so most of my relatives are all either Vegas or Kanab at this point.
Got it.
So, anyway.
Okay. So I moved back. In essence, I got to a point I was out doing sales on the road over the phone, and I decided I didn't want to be in LA anymore, and it made sense to make a change. And so came back here, did some more telemarketing, which is, I have a big background in that, and then got into real estate, with my name, and my dad's a contractor. It just made sense.
Yeah.
So does your dad own Ence Homes?
No, Greg Ence Construction. So Ence Homes are like my cousins once removed.
There's only a few Ences around here.
Only a few, yeah. And I always get asked how I'm related to them. I'm like, well, let me guess here. Once related, twice related, I don't even know anymore.
You either are in construction or dental work.
Dental work, yeah. My uncles are dentists and cousins are dentists. So, yeah, for sure.
Cool.
So talk to me about you getting on this self-development journey. So if you've been in sales for your whole career, right?
Yeah.
Has that kind of always been kind of parallel with your sales career? If you're like, hey, I know if I want to get better at sales, I need to be doing self-development, or is it a moment where you're just like, I'm gonna start down this journey? What was it like for you?
It seems like I always have this feeling inside, like this hunger for knowledge and self-development for some reason is just big for me. Just being my best self. And I think it all happened when I served in LDS mission, honestly.
Where'd you go?
Guatemala.
Guatemala?
Yeah, so way back 1998. That will age me a little bit. But went out and, just wanted to be better. We're in the service of other people.
Yeah.
And so that kind of started it. I've never been the best at actually reading books. I've read some, but Audible, since that's came around, has helped me a lot. But it just fascinates me, just things about how you can change your, is it happening to me or for me? Just take situations and just adapt. So I would say it started then, but more importantly in sales, I mean, you get so many no's. I mean, I know you guys know from.
I'm the master of getting no.
Yeah, there you go. and one more no, or that next no is closer to that next yes, right?
Yeah.
So you just keep going. Not everyone has the capacity to do that. So I've been wanting on this journey lately, especially just to get the knowledge and everything that I can get to be the strongest in every aspect of my life.
Yeah, I love it.
So I'm going to be annoying for a second.
I like that.
Can you put the microphone right in front of your mouth? Up like this?
Yep.
The listeners will have a 10 times better
there
experience.
You go.
There you go.
Are we good?
Much better.
All right.
It'll just sound super echoey if not.
I was going to say, I felt a little weird on my
Yes.
bottom of my beard.
The closer you can get to it, the better it's going to be for the listeners.
All right.
Sometimes it's kind of annoying, but
okay.
Yeah, we actually in one of the episodes I got feedback that the audio wasn't too great. I
actually would recommend you always come closer to you. Keep yours pretty far from your face.
There we go.
I'm going to be the microphone guy the rest of the time.
That's okay. I'd rather get it. I can hear a difference now in my.
Yeah, you guys both sound way better.
Okay.
We good?
You really want to be? No, you want to be closer.
Closer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Closer.
You
put it in your mouth.
Yeah, you want to be touching, lipping.
Yeah, you got lips got to be on it.
You can hear my heartbeat, dude.
So can we. That's what we like. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
It's a lot better for the people that listen when you're really close to it, even though it's really annoying when you're in here.
It's different, yeah, but here we are.
Here we go. Now we all can hear.
Yep.
So when we were at the gym. I say hi to you almost every day, at least a wave or whatever. And I was talking to you about my podcast, and you're like, I would love to come on. And what you wanted, at least what you mentioned, was, hey, I want to talk about my sobriety journey.
Yeah.
And my journey to get sober. And I think I'm excited to talk to you about it because I think there's so many people out there that struggle with that. And so I want you to open up the door and say, okay, this is my journey with drugs. What was the journey? What got you into it? And how was, the experience of getting off of them, and what you've learned now looking back, obviously on the other side of it, because you're obviously doing really well with real estate, your family's together, you're in things are going well now. And I would imagine a lot of people that are in the journey that are still doing opiates or doing drugs are thinking there's no way I'm going to be able to get out of this. The light, there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But you're a beaming example of there is.
Yeah, it feels a lot like, I've said this before, being in a deep, dark hole, right? Mm-hmm. And not knowing how you got there, but looking up and it's dark and feeling and it's muddy or whatever, the walls, and not knowing how to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And, feelings, you're sitting there, you're like, you're hopeless, you're sad, you're depressed. I'm never getting out of this, right? And that's a lot how my addiction felt for many years.
Wow.
Yes, I kind of knew how I got there because I kept using, but the problem is it kept getting worse and worse. And I know you can relate to this, that bottom kept going lower and lower and lower. And before I knew it, I didn't know where I was. I was just deep down somewhere, didn't know how to get out of it. Where at first, and I'll talk about this, when I first started using opiates, I could take them and leave and take them and do whatever, right? So for me, I mentioned I served an alias mission through high school. I drank, I smoked weed. The cool thing we did was we'd put tobacco in our mouth, and we were cool, right? Go down to the river and at lunch and chewed. So I did all those things, and then I shaped up for my mission and went on a mission. I came back, and all of my friends that didn't go on missions, they had nice cars, houses, they had all these things. And I'm like, my gosh, how do you have all these things? They're working in telemarketing, right? They're making all this money. Well, with all this money, all this partying, all these drugs, I learned what ecstasy was. And I'm like, well, maybe try some of that ecstasy, which was a crazy experience. They were doing cocaine off the desk. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. They're able to do that. But I didn't partake, only the ecstasy a little bit, but I didn't partake of the cocaine. I'm just kind of working and going to school. And then one of my buddies hit me up and said, hey, does your mom have any pain pills? And I'm like, what's a pain pill? I didn't know what a pain pill was. And he's like, well, go into her bathroom, and up in the mirror there, I'm open it up and read to me what you see. And I'm like reading this, that, Advil, Percocet. Oh, wait, that Percocet or Loretta. I don't remember what it was, which one of those. And he's like, yeah, that. And I'm like looking at it. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I better try one of these before I take them. So I took one. I didn't even really like it. I'm like, it made me feel just kind of tired or kind of sick. So I took the rest, gave them to him. And then I watch him, and he'd just be kind of like, whoa, just kind of out of it, but happy looking. And I'm like, wow, there's something to that. So found some more and took some and started liking it. What it gave me at work is that energy, right, in cells where I wanted to work all day, every day.
Opiates gave energy.
Yeah. Oh, I had that. Yeah.
Really?
I just wanted to work, man. I wanted to make money. And then
I thought opiates were I've never done opiates. So was it like, I thought it was like a downer.
Well, I think before you're doing copious amounts, it's like it turns you. I remember one time I was driving with my roommate back from college, and I was like telling him about all these business ideas I had, and he looked at me, he's like, did you take something? I was like, yeah, I took some Lortabs, and he's like, yeah, I thought so. But like, it kind of makes you, at least in the early stages of opiate addiction or just taking them, it was like, it would make me kind of just talk, which in cells, I wasn't in cells at the time, but I can imagine it was probably felt really helpful.
Yeah.
And you were kind of fearless to tell people what you thought.
There you go. Fearless and energy. I just kept wanting to work. I was making money. At night when I go out, I was in college, I didn't have to get drunk. I had no fear. I would approach any girl. I would, say whatever, because I had that feeling that I was good. So that went on for years. I wasn't quite hooked to that. I could take it. I just took it for work or at night. And then I moved away to Salt Lake. I started a business and came back. And one day visiting, and I was looking for Lortabs, and no one had them. And this guy I knew, he's like, well, try this. And I'm like looking at it, it's like tiny. And I'm like, you want $30 for this? And he's like, yeah, but just only take a little bit. I'm like, what? So I did it. I sniffed, and I always was sniffing them, lining out lines, and did it. And I'm like, oh, wow, it was good. Better. Yeah. It was more powerful. And before long, I was hooked. It had me hooked. And that was from...
How long did it take you before you got hooked? Was it like...
With Oxy, it was pretty quick.
It was just
I don't... Probably.
Wow.
If not a little bit longer, but like I would just get it and take some, like an 80 would last me a couple days or that at the time, because I cut a little off, sniff it, cut a little, chalk it up. But then, yeah, it got me. It had me. And for those listening that have never been hooked, it's like, imagine feeling sick, like you're gonna throw up. That feeling of being uncomfortable and waking up and having to find. It doesn't feel good.
When you're addicted to drugs, is it mainly that you're trying to avoid how sick you get when you're off of them, or is it like you're just like, I want to get the high, or is it both? Or
I was both. Yes, I love to get high. That nothing will ever change my mindset that I love to get high. It's a good feeling to numb myself and have to feel or worry about that. But you get to a point then where you're if you don't have it, you're sick, and you don't want to be sick. So they talk about chasing the dragon, right? You get that hit, those one hits, they're amazing. Then you're always chasing that feeling, that ultimate feeling. You don't quite ever get it again. You get glimpses of it. But you get to a point where you're just maintaining so that you're not sick. And then it's a constant grind of what can I do today, waking up and finding stuff to make sure that I'm not sick.
Yeah.
I think it's the best way to describe it is imagine if you woke up every day with the flu and you knew you could basically take something that made it go away, which is essentially what it is. You're just almost trying to maintain, with opiates at least, for me, I just remember I felt like you were trying to maintain the new normal, because if you weren't on the pills, you were cranky, you were rude, you were just felt terrible, and all you could think about was wanting more and knowing that, hey, I have the flu, but all I need to do is find this and I'll be good again. So it's like, I think that's like, just imagine waking up every day feeling super awful, but knowing there was a way to not feel that way.
And then even just knowing, like, when I got the call that someone had it, or I had the money and I was on my way over, I almost started feeling better because I knew I was that close to getting it. But it's just like you said, yeah, being able to get rid of that feeling. And it for a few hours, so depending on how much you take. So it's a constant feeling that you're constantly having to get rid of. So it's crazy. Just not good.
It's like +1 -2. +1.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like and it's like you're just going deeper.
Well, it's that. What do they talk about? The flow of life is kind of like this. Look at my arm's not working today. But then when you get high, you shoot up here. So your highs are very high, but your lows are even lower than you're ever used to. So it's a constant like this.
Yeah. I have a friend who's struggling with stuff like this, and he told me, he's like, it's like you're swimming out in the ocean and you're going out and you're loving it, you're having fun, and then every time you do drugs, you're just swimming a little bit farther away, and you always look back at the shore and you're like, I can make it back. Keep on swimming, and all of a sudden you go to swim back, and then it's like the current just keeps on pulling you out, and you're trying to swim and trying to swim. And I remember when he told me that, I'm like, that seems so helpless.
Yeah.
Like, just, oh my gosh, like, I don't know, the way he described it, I was like, that, I could see how hard that would be,
And then the energy to come back, right? Because when you're sick, you don't have energy. You don't want to do it. I mean, once you start getting clean or trying to get clean, you know what you need to do. But then an hour goes by, a day goes by, and you're like, shit, dude, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then you find a way back to it.
Yeah. So then you got hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then what happened?
So let's think. Got hooked. I got arrested a few times. Possession charges, driving while messed up, let's just call it that. And I got to a point, I think it was 2009, I had a bunch of charges. And my parents' lawyer said, you need to go to drug court. You need to do something to fix it. And I'm like, well, what's drug court? And he's like, look, it's pretty much the only way you're going to do this, because they're all felonies. They're all third-degree felonies that I had. I had a bunch of them. So I'm like, okay. So I went and swore into drug court. And for those that don't know what drug court is, here in Utah, at least the state, it was an 18-month program at the time where if you completed it, you're able to reduce your felonies down to misdemeanors. And I mean, it's no joke of a program where you're getting P-tested at first like 5 or 6 times a week. You have trackers or sheriffs stopping by your house all the time, checking in on you. So
you're calling in daily or multiple times a day and finding out.
Yep, you're the color of the day.
If
you're peeing that day or not, you're not able to leave the state. You know, you have a curfew.
And before that happened, before you went to drug court, did you think you're like, I have a problem, or were you just like?
Oh, good question. I can go back to that. Yeah, I got to a point where no one really knew. Like my family, when I was hooked, until one night I just started crying and told my dad, just out of the blue. I just told him.
Had a breaking point.
Just kind of told him, like it was just like I'd kept it for so long, and I hid it well back then. I was able to. As I went on further, I couldn't hide it as well. But back then I could.
Once you spill the beans, everyone knows.
Yeah.
It's funny. That's funny. I literally did the exact same thing. I was married at the time, and I was broke. I couldn't afford drugs anymore. I drove over to my dad's house and was just like, I'm broke, dude. I don't know. I'm not broke. I was broke financially, but I'm just like, I'm broke.
Broke inside.
Broke inside.
Yeah.
And I had an older brother that was way more. He'd dealt with meth, and he was shooting heroin. And so I was kind of like, even when I came to my family and was like, hey, I'm addicted to this, they were like, oh, I kind of felt, at least it was like, oh, you're cute, like over here, you know. And I'm like, no, like legitimately, like, yeah, I realize I'm not putting a needle in my arm, but like I can't stop doing this crap.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to my dad and literally did. He's like, well, good news and bad news is, good news is we can get you help. The bad news is now you got to go tell your wife. So
oh, geez.
that was the fun part. But
I've never been married, but never married, so I didn't have to go through that. I didn't have kids either at the time. I was fortunate for that. But I when I told my parents, of course, my mom, being the good LDS mom that she is, said, well, just stop. Come back to church, right?
Come back.
It's that easy, right? Just stop and come back to church. And it's not that easy.
Right.
I was hooked to something. So they actually they paid for a couple of different treatments I went to, but I went there with not the intention of fully quitting. I just went there to appease them, but also to get off. But I didn't really have a plan. So I went and got off OxyContin. I came back and was clean a little bit. My buddy had energy. I'm like, I have no energy. What are you doing? He was doing meth. So I'm like, cool, give me some meth. So I started doing meth. And that happened for a couple of years. So with meth, I started making bad decisions. And then that's kind of where 2009 came along, and I went into drug court. And what kept me clean in drug court is I didn't want to go to jail. I knew if I used, I would go to jail. And for some reason, I had a fear of going to jail. So I ended up graduating 18 months later. I was clean for about 3 days after that. And I would say, oh, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use it again. And I was sitting there with my buddy where he's playing, I don't know, he's playing Call of Duty or something. I look over at him. I'm like, dude, you're on something. I want it. And he's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm like, I know you. You know, I was when you're clean, I know you're on something. And I talked him into at least getting me some, it was Xanax, and then I got some Roxy, and you know, I started doing that again, which is a form of OxyContin, because it kind of went away. And I ended up going on a cruise with him. His girlfriend had bailed, and he had a spot open, and I went on the cruise and took some pills, and the crazy thing happened. We went to Mexico. A hurricane came. It diverted us to Mexico from the Bahamas, and we went to the pharmacy, bought a bunch of Somas and Valium, right? We went back to the room, and he's like, well, let's just take a couple and take a nap, and then we'll wake up and go do whatever. So he took a couple. I took a shit ton. And the next,
I know how to do these.
Yeah,
couple with it.
Yeah. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up. I have a feel. I'm hurting down low. I'm like, oh, something's hurting. I wake up. I'm on a cold bench in the bottom of a ship on a cruise, and they're pulling the catheter out. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I guess, you know, I didn't wake up. And he was slapping me, and he said my eyes were open, and he took me put me in the shower, like all the things that, anyways.
Yeah.
So it went bad from there, and that was 2000. and it was all the way until 2017 is when I got clean, May 5th, 2017.
Wow. What was your experience after that? Like, you basically almost died. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what I told him? I said, "What'd you do that for? Why? I was fine. I've done that plenty, right? In my mind, right? I honestly used to like to I used to sell cars, and I come home at night. I would do Oxy, Roxy, Somas, and Xanax, like a deadly combination. I'm just going to tell you this. And I'd lay in my bed. I'd have my laptop open. I'd start watching a movie, and then I'd wake up the next day, and like, oh, what happened? And I go to work, and I just love that feeling of just being out of it, not caring, right? I was going to the methadone clinic, and they're like, what you're taking is going to kill you. And I'm like, no, dude, no, I'm not shooting up, man. I'm just sniffing it. I'm just smoking it. I'm just doing this. I'm not going to die. I'm good. So I just kept pushing forward. And eventually I moved to California for 3 months doing solar cells. I didn't have the connections down there. My buddy that I lived with, he was hooked to pills too. We ran out of pills. So what do we go to? Gravitate towards heroin. That was the next thing because we didn't have the money. So I started doing heroin. And then I ended up moving back to St. George, 2016, I think it was, end of 15. And I didn't have all the connections, but somehow I got connected with the cartel from Vegas. They'd bring it up to me. They'd deliver it to me. I'd deliver a good amount. I'd sell it to support my habit. And, I was going along just great. I'd do heroin to keep me well, not to be sick. And then I'd do meth at night to help me so I could go stay awake if I needed to go back down to Vegas. And that happened all the way until one night we made a bad decision. We looked all the signs of you shouldn't go to Mesquite tonight. We outlooked those. We couldn't find his keys for like 4 hours. All these things, which in my opinion was God saying, don't go to Mesquite, don't go to Mesquite. I was hell bent we were going to Mesquite that night. So we got there, we gambled, we ended up falling asleep in the car, and people said we're drinking in the car, which we weren't. But we ended up getting arrested. And I didn't know how much heroin we had. I just re-upped, had a whole ounce, but it was at my house. I didn't realize that. I only had a couple of Bs, which was a small amount, but in Nevada, it was a felony. And so we went from Mesquite down to Las Vegas. I had been preparing myself to go do something, for the last year before I got clean. I knew something bad was about to happen health-wise. Not that I was going to get robbed or I was going to die. My health was going. It was really bad. So I had gotten Obamacare insurance so that I could go to detox. So I had that, let's just say, in my back pocket. But then when I got arrested, my parents helped bail me out from Las Vegas. And then when I came back, I had a felony, and I did some things to go to, not to detox. So I went to detox here and to get better. And that was kind of so far, it's been the last straw. Because as you know, for me, there's no cure for addiction, at least for this type of addiction. I have daily cures, things that I can do to help myself. We can talk about that later. But for me, as an addict, my addiction and Jason's addiction, it's always waiting for us, constantly waiting for that low moment. It could be today, it could be 10 years from now, where it knows me better than I know myself, and it's always constantly waiting for that moment to, hey, bro, 20 years, man, you've gone 20 years. Just do one line, man. You're good. You've earned that, right? So it's always constantly waiting for us.
So what's the idea behind this? Like, it seems like people that go through AA or like rehab, it's always like they never say they're not an addict. Like, in my beliefs is always like, if you say you're an addict, you're reaffirming that you want to do drugs, which I'm not saying that's the case, but it's like the affirmation of like, I'm an amazing salesman, I'm an amazing husband, whatever. It almost seems like counterintuitive from my perspective, but I'm wrong here, just from my perspective. So what's the philosophy behind, like, I'm always an addict, I just don't do drugs today, maybe tomorrow, maybe next year, I don't know, but for today I'm just not going to do them. What's the philosophy behind that?
I don't know the exact philosophy besides taking it one day at a time or 1 minute at a time. Sometimes it's 1 second at a time, just knowing that you can get through that second or that minute. For me, like AA and NA for the first year of my recovery helped save my life because I was going to 5 or 6 meetings a week, week, where I was able to talk to other individuals that are going through the same types of things to help provide guidance and help. And I was able to be myself, and I was, I go play volleyball with them, we go do things, right? And that helped me at least get that first year under the belt. And then after that, I was focused on enjoying life and a career and all these things. So I don't know the exact thing about once an addict, always an addict. Mm-hmm. It is true though.
I think it's more you're staying humble to the idea that like, hey, my ego is not going to take over, and I'm not going to be like, I got this.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I guess I don't know. I guess you could technically go the route of like, oh, I'm with affirmations against it. But I think overwhelmingly what people have seen that have tried to get clean or that have gotten clean is that you don't really need to don't fight against it. It's more just like, hey, this is who I am, and I know that's who I am, so I'm going to make choices that lead me this direction because I know that's who I am. I know that's who I'll always be. So I'm going to leave my ego out of it and just be humble to the fact that like there's a good chance that if someone laid some opiates on this table right now, me and Greg would probably convince each other to do them together. Of course. So keep them in your pocket.
Yeah, no one would
More
know.
for me and Ty.
Yeah, no one would know. Turn off the cameras. No one would know. Would be fine, right? The odds are stacked against an addict too. You have better odds that I'm going to use again than I'm not going to use again, and that's just based on statistics. My therapist and things used to tell me that all the time. Like in a room of I don't know how many people, the chances of all of you living are slim. The chances of all you staying clean are slim, very slim, even slimmer. So it's just knowing that and just accepting, I am an addict and, I can't, where maybe you could sniff a line of oxy right now and not do it again and be fine. Me and Jason, we can't.
Yeah, and I had tons of friends I hung out with that were that way.
Yeah.
Like still this day, they've never went down the roads that I went down, and we would do them together, and they would wake up the next day and carry on with normal life, and I would wake up the next day and be searching for more.
Yeah, recreational using, yeah.
Like it just, some people's brain chemistry is not.
I think like really what I heard from what you were saying is like there shouldn't be any shame around I'm an addict. Like I have a question for both of you guys. Like if you have addictive personality, I think I've met a lot of salespeople that are addicts that are very successful. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a lot of successful addicts because those personality traits correlate to very, very good things that can create very big things. Have you guys noticed that those same personality traits have helped you? Obviously, Jason, you're doing really well. You're doing well. Have you noticed that those things like, oh yeah, that's kind of this, like it's a blessing and a curse, and this is the blessing part of it?
Yeah, I can chime in first if you want. So some of the most successful people out there are recovering addicts because they talk about, I'm sure you've heard the outworking a crackhead, right? Have you ever heard the saying outworking a crackhead? I'm sure you have. Mm-hmm. Where you could look at a homeless guy or a crackhead that's on the street, right? That you see him there every day, and he goes to bed with nothing, literally, but wakes up, and by 12:30 or whatever time it is in the day, he's got his fix. Why? Because he's going to do whatever it takes.
Relentless.
Yeah, lie, chill, cheat, steal, beg, borrow, whatever it is, whatever he's got to do or that person's got to do to get his fix, they're going to do. And I've done that. I've been there. I did whatever. I stole thousands of dollars from my dad. We have the same name. I wrote checks, right? Easy to do. I stole thousands of dollars from my grandma, which it's hard to say, but I did. I would take money from my mom. I'd write checks, and my mom would cover my ass for my dad, for my dad seeing it, right? So I did all these things, and it helped form and make me to the man I am. But going back to the point of that is, if we're able to channel these same things, I know for sure if I can overcome getting high or my addiction, which I'm still working on that, but if I can overcome that, I can do anything in business, right? That drive, that hunger, that putting my all into everything every day to making sure I had at least a couple $100 or whatever it is to get my fix. If I can channel that into my business, into my life, just think of where I'm at.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything Greg just said is 100% spot on. I mean, I think the reality is like, it's kind of ridiculous to think about, but like, yeah, I was probably the biggest hustler in the world when I wanted to get drugs. Like I'd steal from my family. I'd steal from my wife. I'd pawn stuff. Insert whatever I needed to do. I would figure it out to find money to buy more drugs always. And so I think that does translate over. I think a huge part of success is stacking wins. And I think when you've come off drugs, no matter how much we try to leave our ego out of it, there's a sense of pride in that of like, dude, I know how hard what I did was. And like, so you're stacking a pretty big win on your side, which in business, I think is a key part of success is like, it's just accumulating win after win after win after win. And all you're really doing is gaining confidence. Right. And so you have this, when you come into something and like, hey, I've done some hard shit. Like I've went in and I've said no to drugs in situations now that I in the past wouldn't have. I've said no to alcohol. I've said no to whatever. You've stacked those wins and you're helping build momentum in your direction. And so I think all of those things combined definitely help in sales or in business. And I think that's why so many people, and I also think you have to be kind of a psycho to be good at business. Mm-hmm. If you really want to be, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm going to go into business for myself so I can work less and make more. And if that's what you're looking for, you probably should just go back and get your job, because most people that for at least several years, all the years I've been in so far, you're going to work more. You're going to make more, most likely, at least in my case, I make a lot more money than I made working for somebody else. But I'm hopelessly addicted now to business and to solar and to all these different avenues that we're doing that, my wife literally teases me that she says I'm married to River and not her, because we spend hours and hours and hours talking about, hey, how are we going to fix this problem? How are we going to solve this? It doesn't matter if it's 9:00 at night, we're kind of the crackhead. It's like, hey, we're going to start at 6 a.m. or whenever both of us wake up. River's going to start at 6. I'm going to start at 8. And then it's probably 7, but then, we'll be calling each other sometimes at 10, 11 o'clock at night when things aren't the way we want them or whatnot. And it's like, we're kind of behaving like crackheads in a sense that we're the rest of the normal people in the world. They go home at 5. They don't talk about work. They don't want to think about work. They don't want to be part of that. So there's so many things that translate over from like being a drug addict to a business person, which I think is why, and I think it's good for a drug addict. Like, I think the biggest thing that leads to relapse is boredom for a lot of people. Yeah. Like they're not busy. They get bored and they're like, yeah, what should I do? Well, I could always call Tom back, and Tom always got something fun going on. And, next thing you know, they're hanging out with Tom, and Tom's got the meth, and then 2 years go by and you're in drug court and, all these things that Greg's explained. So I just think there's so many items that do translate over. And then I also think there's just that part of drug addicts that kind of want to stay busy and want to stay away from drugs to where they keep themselves crazy busy. So,
excuse me.
River is a drug addict. River could have been a drug addict. He's just chosen very healthy things to be addicted to.
Dude, I don't know, because I've done my fair amount of drugs. I feel like if I would have got addicted, I would have.
You didn't do the good ones.
Yeah, I never messed with opiates. I just have enough family members and friends that have messed up their lives through opiates that I was down to do a lot of things, but not those. So I'm like that. Those are the ones that people like a little bit too much. Molly's fun, cocaine's fun, but I wasn't like, I need this. But
cocaine sucks. I don't know about fun. It's fun for about 4 minutes, and then you're like, you know what we need? More cocaine.
Exactly.
Yeah, I often have wondered that throughout this conversation. I'm like, what? I don't know. I'm sure if I did opiates, they seem to be enjoyable.
And
enough.
You could be the one that does them and you enjoy them and don't do them again or don't get hooked to them. I mean, there are people that do them like that all the time.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for me, I can't do that. Yeah. I mean, I know for sure, like he's saying, if I do that, if I'm lucky, I'll make it another 5 years and then try to fix myself again. But most likely, I'll probably pass away.
Yeah.
At this point,
Yeah, I mean, so many of my friends from back in those days are gone, like dead, suicide. My mother-in-law committed suicide. She was a meth addict. So my wife's been through the ringer with drug addiction. And yeah, it's crazy. Like I just think, or overdose. Like I've had so many people around me that were, not luckily. I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, but I had spaced myself from them because I got off drugs in 2008, and I really have done nothing. I've drank. I got off drugs, and then I drank for 10 years behind my wife's back until 2020, and I've been really completely sober since 2020. And so, but yeah, I mean, so many people that I used to do drugs with are dead, and that's why often I'm like, man, like I don't think I would be a whole heck of a lot different if I went back out, especially now that I have a family and I've had some success. There would be a lot of shame of crap that I would probably be throwing away for drugs that would lead me to a much darker place than I probably ever felt. So,
and think of now with your situation with you're making more money, you have more money to spend.
Oh,
and all of that, where I didn't at the time, right?
Yeah,
I got to a point where I didn't. So you have a lot more, so you're going to go a lot bigger. And what's going to happen is most likely you're going to probably end up doing too much and probably pass away.
Be dead in a suite in Vegas.
Yeah, that's it. Unfortunately, that's what happens. I personally should be dead for all the amount of, even though I wasn't shooting up, I shot up one time because I was too scared I was going to die. Even though I wasn't shooting up, all the different chemicals and stuff going in my body, who knows? It could have easily been my time. Besides the time on the cruise.
Yeah.
It easily should have been my time. But I feel that God's left me here for a reason. I'm a huge believer in God. I know that you are as well, just in following you. And, I have a purpose in life, and it's to share where I've been and to talk to other recovering addicts or other people in life that, you can get through anything that you need to get through. It's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of bad days and a lot of times where you feel like you can't. But if you just find a way to keep pushing, and like he's talking about stacking those wins, a win could be you woke up that morning and got out of bed, went for a walk. Could be easy things, but no matter what, we all are going to go through stuff. You're going to go through stuff. You've gone through stuff. We've gone through stuff. But how can you adapt and continue to go through life and attack life and not always be on the defensive when life is attacking you, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with even like this conversation, I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, I haven't done opiates in, whatever, 16 years. Yeah, 16. Wow, that's long. 16 years. I haven't drank in 4 years. But I'm like, okay, now what other areas of my life am I addicted to things? I think right now my diet is like, I got pretty healthy for a while, and then I've just, every day I'm like, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna eat healthy. And then the next day comes and I'm like, yeah, I was, but I'm at Maverick, and like, yeah, I'll get a protein shake because that's healthy. But also they got donuts over here. So, by noon, I'm kind of that drug addict with my diet lately. I'm not massively obese like I actually once was. But I think that's the thing is I think everybody in life, if someone turns this, is not willing to listen to addiction things, I think they're arrogant a little bit, because I think everybody, I look at a lot of people, I am still active in the church. I'm guessing both of you guys are not, which is totally fine. I don't really care. But I see a lot of people within the church that are because I've hung out with you and he lives with his girlfriend. So,
and we have a kid together.
And they have a kid together, but maybe they're still going. And I don't care at all whether you're part of the church or not, but I go to church and I see all these people that are massively overweight, and I'm like, well, look, you may not be on opiates, but like you can't stop eating. You can't stop. You're filling your emotions with food, but you're too prideful to admit that this is a problem in your life. And I think, there's just so many areas in which addiction translates over. And quite frankly, in my life right now, also my work-life balance, like I'm way out of proportion probably in the work area and not as much with spending time with my family as I would like to be. So I think there's so much translation there that people maybe overlook, that if they could listen to someone like Greg and say, hey, maybe I'm not addicted to opiates, but like, how can I look at some of these things he's saying and translate it over to energy drinks? Maybe it's the energy drinks that you have shame around. Maybe it's, whatever habits you have going on in your life. I think there's a lot that people can learn from someone like yourself.
I was just going to say one thing to that. You talked a lot about being so focused on your business, right? When I got clean, I wanted to make all this money, man. I wanted to get jacked. I wanted to be ripped, And I was so focused on those areas of my life, the finance and the fitness, where my relationship with God was lacking, right? I had a pittance. Even though I was clean and I was doing really well, I had an emptiness, this pit in my stomach. And then my relationship at home with my girlfriend wasn't all that great either, because I was so focused on work and so focused on, look, I'm making this money, baby, I'm doing this and that. But all she wants is my attention, me to put my phone down or be present with the kids, right? So finding, for me, when you're talking about this, finding some type of balance, because I'll work all day, every day, 24 hours a day. I love working, especially in like real estate or something that I like, in sales. If I enjoy it, I'll work. But for me, with being with her and all that, I need to make sure that I put my phone down, and I'm not actively looking to call people at night for business, to not be there with my family. So I just wanted to add to that real quick.
Yeah. How did you when you realized you had a void with your relationship with God? What steps did you take to fill that or like to get better in that area?
So two things. I'll answer that in two ways. When I got clean in drug court, I was meeting with my counselor, and when I was doing just meth, it was the only time in my life I felt like I was the devil. I felt so evil. I had never felt that feeling before, and right now I can, about the hairs on my arm are sticking up, like that feeling. And I was talking to my the counselor at the time, and I'm like, I'm doing well, but I don't feel like I'm doing well. Like, I don't feel good inside, and I'd lost that connection with God, because I wasn't praying, I wasn't doing those things. And she's like, well, what you need to do. And I'm like, no, I really don't. I'm praying, I'm trying. And so I started consciously thinking and looking for, I was looking for not a sign, like the light to go off or something. I don't know, something crazy. When one night I just started praying, and I said, look, dude, I'm scared. I need help. I need you. And I just felt this feeling, this warmth come over my heart. And that helped me get it back, right? That feeling. Fast forward to what we're talking about in getting that back is just, I've constantly prayed. But just knowing that God's not going to put anything in front of me that I can't get through, and just being able to openly talk to Him has been big for me. Also with meditation, just being able to disconnect and just relax and just enjoy this beautiful world that we're in, right? I go out back of my house. I see you on some of your stories. I go out back of my house, and sometimes I'll go out barefoot and just sit on the chair and just turn on some theta waves or something and just listen, or just listen to it's like 5 a.m, whatever. Just listen to things, and to me that's God.
Yeah,
that's God talking to me. So it's a constant thing that I'm trying to do is just continue to have confidence in myself, but also that relationship with God.
Yeah, because I left the church. What was that, 2016? So that's been, dang, dude, 8 years. Holy cow. Yeah. And when you leave the church, at least the way that I felt was, I had this bookshelf, and the bookshelf was the church. Mm-hmm. And then when I left the church, chose to leave, all the bookshelf broke, and I have all these different beliefs. Like, do I still believe this? Do I believe that? And I felt very, very lost for a long time. Still do at times. Just not knowing, clear, this is what God is. That's what's so nice about the Mormon church or about religion, is this is what you should believe. Here's the documentation. Just believe that. When I choose not to be in religion, it's kind of led me to believe, okay, what is God for me? And for me, it's the simple things. I think it's always, for me, it's always distracting from my phone, or I try to be overstimulated or go dirt biking, or always trying to distract from the present moment. But the way that I find God is when I just allow myself to stop, River. Just stop and just be here and just be quiet and just listen. And I just see it in the nature of just this is all God's creation. This is all what was created by God. I just need to sit here and experience this and be here now, as opposed to always being somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And anyway, it's really challenging for me. We'll talk about being addicted to my phone, addicted to distracting myself from the stillness of God. It's almost like I'm afraid to be there. Anyway, yeah, I don't really know what my point is. That's what I thought.
Distracting yourself from having to face something that you need to take care of, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. Like for me, put me in a fishing boat, give me a fishing pole, and that's God for me. That just simple things like that.
That sounds like meth to me.
That too.
Sounds like the devil.
Yeah, I love it.
My ADD would flare up too quick.
Would it? Man, I love it.
I'd probably be too close to God, and I'm like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, because you want to go the other way. And I would do that a lot. That's a great point. I do that a lot to show my mom, like, look, haha, I can go over. Here's the line you've told me. You said I can't cross this line. Look, I'm right over that line. Oh, look, I'm over here now. And it helped keep me sick because, in essence, my mom's just doing the best she can to teach me what she believes.
Yeah.
But I took it on myself to like, oh, yeah, I'll show you. I'll go over here. And before now, I was stuck over here.
Right.
And so now I just, like with my son, I just try to be the best example that I can. I mean, he's only 19 months old, but we have a 5-year-old there and the 15-year-old, and I just try to be a good example, and try to just teach him right from wrong, or, like how to be a respectable human in this world. That's the thing. Like, church is one thing, but just being a good Christian, just being a good person,
Right.
I joke a lot with, Eric Gubler. I go to the gym a lot, or walking out of the gym, and I'll look at someone and say, hey, or I'll smile at them, and just it catches them off guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, but just smiling to people. It's like, I grew up in the time where I worked a lot in the hay fields and the peach orchards, and I was taught to work hard at a young age, and all of that. I was taught right from wrong. I was fortunate to be in that society versus now. So I want to teach those things to my son,
Mm-hmm.
that he's the same way. There is hope for it.
Yeah. If you had to give your son 3 lessons, you pass away tonight, and you're like, hey, you have 3 lessons to write them. What are the 3 lessons you leave your kids?
3 lessons? Well, I get asked this a lot. Like, what would you do if your son started using? And I can use that as lesson 1. Is I would love and support him and tell him, no matter what you're going through, we can find a way through this. It's going to be hard as hell. It's going to be probably the hardest thing you ever go through. But I will do my best to help you. I would take it from you, but I can't do it. I can't help you. I can't. You have to do the work. No one's going to do the work for you. So my lessons to him would be being honest. I feel that I'm an honest person. There's plenty of times in life where I wasn't honest, but just being honest. A man of your word, man. If you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. If you say you're going to show up for someone, show up.
Mm-hmm.
That's important to me. And respect. Respecting. An elder or someone that went to war, or just a teacher, whatever it is. Like, disrespect for me is a tough one. When I feel disrespect from the kids or see it, I lose it.
Yeah.
It just gets me.
It's a boundary.
So and if I didn't say hardworking, like, no one's going to give you. Yeah, I can provide you a lot of things. I can give you money, all this stuff, but you got to work hard, and you got to learn to work hard at a young age. And by doing that and by establishing yourself, you'll be able to work hard in anything, just like you guys have, right? And build something up from the ground up. And, my dad taught me that at a young age. I wanted a new truck like my friends. And the only way I could get it is he helped me get a loan on it. It was like a $5,000 loan, nothing crazy. But I had to, I played baseball in high school, but I'd have to leave practice and go work, or in the summer work to make the payment, right? He didn't just give me that. And I'm forever grateful for that, because I had to work, and yes, he helped me in getting the loan, but I had to go put the hours in to make sure that I made it work to make the payment. So those would be the big things I'd say to him, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the first thing you said is, even if he wasn't using, like, I think as a parent, like, I feel like that's something I've really tried to embody, is like, I can't do this for you. I can't do this for you. And not saying I always do it correct, because I don't know if there is a correct way to parent, but it's just like sometimes it's hard to watch your kids hurt or watch them kind of suffer, and as a parent, I think especially if you have a few dollars in your pocket or you have whatever, it's often easy to be like, well, I just I could fix this. But I've watched. I grew up pretty fortunate. I grew up with a family that had more than most, and so I grew up around other people that grew up that way. And I watched some of my dad. Definitely, we were well taken care of. Like, I definitely was a spoiled kid. But at the same time, my dad was the guy that wasn't gonna bail you out about everything you did. He wasn't just gonna show up and be like. And I had tons of friends that their parents did have a lot of money, and I watched their parents. Like, I look back and I'm like, their parents would kind of cover up for them almost,
Oh, yeah.
And it's like. And I see where some of those kids have turned out and kind of the way they're still allowing their parents to cover for them today. And versus what my dad was always just like, same thing, like in the summer from age 13, like you're going to go out and you're going to work and you're not going to ask me for money because you're going to have money from working. And they would still give me money, probably quite often, but but I just felt like they didn't ever try to save me from, if I was having troubles with my friends, they wouldn't get involved. They would just like, you got to work that out. And where I'd see some of the other parents be like, try and solve the problem and all these things. And I think that translates over very well. I feel like my knock on wood, my kids are all still somewhat young, but I feel like they're turning out to be pretty decent humans. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out.
They had that, like you're talking about your friends, they had that expectation that no matter what they did, no matter how bad it was, their parents are going to cover it for them or pay for them out of it. And unfortunately, they get to a point where they do something so bad that there's no coming back or whatever it is, or their parents get to a point where they're sick and tired of bailing out their kid, and their kid actually has to finally do the work.
Yeah, well, and I think the problem is from a parental perspective, once you've had a kid, you realize like, yeah, it's easy to understand why parents do that for their kids. It's easy to understand why they would bail their kids out over and over and over again, or always be there to save them. But I don't know. I look at it and I'm like, I don't think that's the way. I don't think you're letting them learn the lessons that they need to learn, to become successful adults. And I credit a ton of who I've become due to the way my dad was. I probably don't give my mom credit, but probably the way she was as well, because it was like when we went through stuff, my dad would let us fill the fire. He would always save me, I would say, in the end, in some way or another, but it like not without forcing me to fill the fire that I created. And so that's a huge thing that I really try to embody with my kids. I probably do it better with my older kids. The younger they get, the less energy I have to care. But no, I don't know what it is about it. You get more jaded, but probably need to be better about that with my youngest son. He's a spoiled little brat.
Your heart's just softening.
Yeah, I love
Don't grow up.
Yeah. You're like, oh crap, my youngest is 10. They're all becoming adults.
Oh wow.
I just think so often I look at myself and I'm like, so often I kind of wait for somebody to save me. It's like, oh, someone else will solve this problem, or I don't know. It's like always pushing the can down the road as opposed to taking full accountability. And the truth is nobody's coming to save. Nobody cares about my problems nearly as much as me. Like nobody cares. Like people might care a little bit, but their mind is solved.
They don't.
They don't.
Like they care about their problems. You know what I mean?
We all have problems.
Like it's like that's like it's so simple, but I think it's something that I struggle with at times. I think everybody struggles with at times. Is they're just like, I'm not accountable. Like I'm not. Like it's no one's coming to save you from your drug addiction. No one's coming. No one's gonna come do that for you. You have to do the work. And it's like the same thing with even the little things. Like we are 100% accountable for everything that we create in our lives. And as soon as we realize that, then we put ourselves in the power position, because then we can do something about it. So
I sometimes like to ignore whatever my problem is. Like if I ignore it, don't look at it, I don't have to deal with it. It's just going to go away.
Right.
It's just going to go away. But the problem is it stacks up and stacks up and stacks up and stacks up. And before I know it, I have a shit ton of stuff that I have to deal with, where if I just handled it initially or tried to, attempted to, then, it would be a lot easier. And in the long haul, not dealing with everything at one time.
Right. And most of the time, I think we create stories of how much harder it'll be to solve issues than it really is. Yeah. But once you actually go and solve the issue, there's some that are probably harder than what you expect. Majority of problems are not that big of a deal. And once you just go after it and just solve the issue,
just face it. Yeah, if you can just face it, right? Yeah. And sit in the fire, what they talk about, for a minute, and get burnt for a minute of it, and then get through it. I mean, I'm with you there, but the problem is it's easier not to.
Right.
It makes me think of doing my taxes every year. Like I literally, like River we use the same tax accountant, and he'll send his stuff over to the guy like July 3rd or January 3rd. I don't know, as quick as he can.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like the total opposite. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that.
He seems like the guy that would be the January 1st. He's like, here, let's get this taken
April 10th, the accountants, messaging me like, hey, dude, like, we got to get this done. And then it takes like literally an hour worth of my time. And I spent 4 months stressing and worrying about it versus just like being like every year after I did, I'm like, oh, that wasn't even hard. Like I should have just done that months ago.
Save yourself the stress and the anxiety.
I'm like over anxious about like, oh, where do I go to find my mortgage statement and this and that. And then I do it and I'm like, oh, it literally took me an hour. I probably should have just done that back in February, but instead I've thought about it for 4 months or 3 months and probably been unproductive in other areas because of it.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
It reminds me of a training I give that I learned. It's just called closing circuits and opening circuits. It's like whenever there's a task to be done, taxes, insert whatever, I need to call American Express. That's an example for me right now. I need to call American Express, and as soon as I know I've needed to do that, which has been 2 weeks now, that's an open circuit. And whenever you have an open circuit, you have energy that's being withdrawn from you. And it's like the faster we can just solve the problems, like when I talk about, that's an easy problem to solve, probably take me 10 minutes. Then I close that circuit and I have more energy. But it's like we just have all these open circuits. I need to take out the trash. I need to do the taxes. I need to do this. I need to do that. And it's like no wonder why we're so exhausted all the time.
Overwhelmed too, being pulled in.
Need a damn lower tab. You know what I mean?
Just so you know, if you go to the Amex app, go to contact us, you can actually text them for 99% of things.
See, there you go. So Greg, for the final remarks, I want to hear like if you had to give advice for people that are going through addiction and they're working through, getting sober, what are some things that you would tell them?
Okay.
And some like maybe tactical practices that you found that worked for you. Perfect.
I think number one is you got to come to a realization that you have a problem. Admit that you are an addict, and I stayed sick for so long because I wasn't that addict because I wasn't shooting up, right? So I wasn't that bad, but in essence, I was doing drugs every day. So just to a point, yes, I have a problem. Admitting to yourself, hey, I got a problem. And that you need help. And start getting some help. Start talking to people. We all know people. I mean, now with social media or with the internet, watch podcasts or watch YouTube videos or anything. Reach out to a therapist. Reach out to someone and talk about it. Right? That you have a problem, because with the addiction, you need help. It's very, very. I would say it's very unlikely that you're gonna be able to get through it on your own, and keeping it to yourself. It really is. The next thing I would say is in changing your environment. I was listening to, I think it was a TED Talk talking about, it's always rats. They're always using rats to experiment on. And they had these 2 rats or they're just talking about rats in a box, right? And they had water laced with water and then water that was laced with some type of drug. I don't know what it was. And if they're in a confined box, they're always drinking the water laced with whatever drug it was to get that feeling. They also did the same study with rats, and they put them they called it a ratopia, like with wheels are running and all these things where they were in this big space, and the rats would choose the water over the laced drug, down drug, and it's because of their environment. So you got to change your environment. For me, it was changing my phone number. Think it's something so simple. I would never change my phone number or deleting contacts out of my phone number. Because what happens, 2 years go or a month goes down the line, I'm like, oh, I'll call Lou up and go hang out at his house. He's got fun stuff going on, I bet. So you start changing your invite, change your number. And then the last thing I would say is just enjoy life, man. God, in my opinion, God put us here to enjoy life, to enjoy his creations and everything else. He didn't put me here personally to be a loser. And I've been a loser. I was a loser for many parts of my life. Robbing, cheating, stealing, all those bad things. But I know I found my calling in life, and I'm here to be a light and example, and to be able to be a good father, a good brother, a good son, all of those things. But some people, they get clean and they stay stuck in just being clean, living to stay clean, and or just living and not expanding, just staying in. I'm not saying staying in the rooms of NA and AA is a bad thing. I'm not saying that, but there's people that get stuck in there, like with 15, 20 years, and that's all they're focused on is just not drinking for today and I'm cool because I haven't drank, and telling the young guys about how they haven't drank for 20 years, whatever it is. But yet they should, in my opinion, enjoy life. I mean, go out there and do other things and not be stuck just in that as well. So that's the biggest thing for me is no matter what you're going through, there's someone that's gone through it, and there's plenty of people that have gone through worse. So be a man or be a woman about it and talk to someone, and you'll find out really quickly that you're not as bad of a person as you think you are.
Yeah.
And then I would say this last, and I've been chiming on this a lot, is suicide is not the answer. There's too many of us guys, and I'm just going to use guys because the suicide rate for guys is so much higher than for women. Women, they get with their friends, they talk about what they're going through. Us guys, we stuff it, right? We can't show emotion. That's what society says. You can't show emotion. You can't cry. You can't tell someone you're struggling. Well, what happens is these feelings and things fester inside of us like a cancer, I like to say. And then before, someone that isn't even using ends up killing themselves because the pressure was too high. When if they could understand that it's okay I know for sure I could reach out to you, River, and say, hey, bro, I'm struggling. For sure. And you for sure would listen to me, and you would give me some advice or whatever it is, right? You got to find people in life that I say like-minded dudes for me, but that can help you, but most importantly that you can be honest with. Because for me, I've lost too many people, and I used to think suicide was let's just say the pussy way out. I'm just gonna say it like that. But as I started thinking about it, and someone helped me realize this, because I'm like, dude, how could he just do that? He's got 2 kids and all that. Well, how could he do that to his family? I had someone that walked me through this, said, you got to think about this. That person that committed suicide, their pain and everything was so great and so bad that it's the only thing that made sense. Even though they knew that they'd be gone and their kids would be alone, that's the only answer and thing that made sense for them.
I think a lot of times people convince themselves that the kids would be better without them.
Yeah, that's it.
That's like,
yeah, the world would be better. And I laid in bed plenty of times. I was never the guy that had the gun in my mouth, right? But I laid in bed plenty of times and thought, gosh, it'd be better if I just didn't wake up. It'd be easier on my parents. It'd be easier on myself, because I'd been clean a few times. I knew what I was going to have to do to get there. So I would lay there and think that, man, I just don't want to wake up. It'd be easier on everyone. But personally, you got to reach out, man. You got to do it.
I have those thoughts. And I don't know if they're that unnormal. I have a pretty damn good life. And sometimes I'm like, this shit's too hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
Like sometimes I'm like, dude, screw this. And I just think that if people do you ever have those thoughts?
Oh, 100%.
Do you ever have those thoughts still?
All the time now, because I'm like, I'm a business owner. I have all these other things, all these other responsibilities. And I'm like, plenty of times I'm like, dude, I should just not live.
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, and just go on, right?
Yeah.
And not have to deal with it.
I just think it's like, it's easy to think I'm the only one that thinks this way, but I actually believe that majority of people actually have those thoughts. I think the difference is how long do you dwell on those thoughts. Some people last an hour, some people it's 2 seconds, some people they focus on it way too long. But I just think those negative thoughts are just part of the human condition almost. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just think they're way more common, and if people just realize like, no, I have them, so does everybody else, like, okay, it's okay.
My thought
Nothing
is,
wrong with me.
My thought is and this is just my personal belief, is that's the devil trying to take out a good man or a good woman, right? By planning those things and helping them to, not helping, but just to be able to act on it, right?
Yeah.
Someone that's meant to do big things in this world or help a lot of people or just whatever it is, just being there and
Such a good way to think about it.
That's the way I look at it, right? Because, and I'll just say this. When I was on my mission, the LDS mission, I loved it. I would run around, man. I was so happy. But the devil's way of holding me back from doing the Lord's work at the time was the sicknesses I got. I had typhoid fever. I had all these sicknesses, man. I kept getting, and it would keep me down for a day. I was hospitalized one time. That was his way of trying to hold me back from doing, let's just say, the Lord's work at the time, right? And even now, there's times that I feel that I'll get a kidney stone or whatever it is to try to prevent me from continued growth and going forward, because the stronger I am, the better of an example or a father or whatever it is that I am. it takes away from his power on me.
Yeah.
You know, and if he can keep me to feeling like a loser and a nobody, and I don't belong to be here, but most importantly, the shame, you know, like you're a loser, you shouldn't be here, you're bad, from all the bad stuff, which I felt that for many years, even after being clean. If he could get me to that point, then that could take me back down to another route. But me personally know that that's not me. You know, I know that I'm meant to be here. I know that God loves me, and I love myself. And that's the thing. I can face myself, and I'm an open book. You know, I'm willing to look in the mirror, if there's a mirror right there, and stare at the mirror and stare at myself and just say, that's me, you know, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So powerful. Any final remarks from you, Mr. Hershey?
No, I love it. I mean, the suicide stuff is, I think the, you know, listening to you guys, I think that's the tricky part about it is, right? Like, I think most of us, I've talked to my wife about it, and she claims she's never thought that. Whenever I say something about it, she's like, really? You're what? No, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm crazy. I don't know. But so I think some people don't, but I think that's the crazy part is, like, I don't feel like, you know, I think a lot of society, if you tell them that, they're like, oh, you're suicidal. And I'm like, no, I'm not suicidal. Like, I'm not, trust me. First of all, I don't have the courage to do it. Second of all, I wouldn't really do it. Like, I just sometimes life's hard, and I feel that way, but it's like, where is the line? You know, even with my mother-in-law, it was like, she told us all, she's like, I'm going to kill myself. I'm not going back to prison. And we were like, shut the hell up. Like, gosh, you're so annoying. You've been on meth forever. Just like, oh, so exhausting. And then a couple weeks later, we get a call, and it's like, yeah, Leah's dead. You know, she shot herself. And we're all just like, what the freaking hell? So I don't know. Anyway, suicide, it really boggles my mind, because I think there is this line of, like, where some people, and I don't know if it's shame and people finding out of what they did or what, or just the pain. It's a very confusing thing, and kind of knowing where that line is of whether people are actually suicidal, I think is the real hard part.
Yeah.
So I would
say on that, like, who can you talk to about that, right? His wife doesn't understand. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with her, but, you know, find people that you can be open with and just talk whatever craziness is on your mind, and know they're not going to judge you. Sometimes that's a therapist. Unfortunately, it's a therapist where you can go in and just speak your mind. Hey, this is my thought, and not be judged for it.
Yeah.
Or
I just do it to everybody.
There you go.
People are like, whoa, rein it back there, bud.
Hey, I'm Brad. It's good to meet you. let's say hi first. Yeah, I view it, because I've had some family members go through some pretty intense stuff regarding mental health. And I view it just like an addiction. Like, when you're talking, I mean, and I don't know, just from the way it's been explained, it feels like you're at the bottom of a pit, and you're just looking up, and you're just like, there's no way. There's no way out of it, you know. Just, I think right before people commit suicide, it's just hopelessness, and then that's the next step of just being like, I'm too far deep.
And to be better on everyone else and myself, if I just, you know, I'm gone.
Right.
Then I'm not keeping them down, all that stuff. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I think they've just kind of going back to what we said earlier. I think usually from the people I've seen, it's like they just quit. You know, there's this mechanism where they don't feel able to stack. Anything goes their way in life, and they're not stacking any wins. They're not stacking anything in their favor, and they feel like they're unable to. You know, I have one of my kids, right, I feel like is maybe in a little bit of state of depression right now, and I'm like, but I talked to her, and I'm like, hey, well, have you gone to the gym today? Have you done this? Have you, like, done anything that would potentially, and I'm like, and it's hard when people are in that kind of depressed or not so happy state. I think what they do is they just self-sabotage into more unhappiness. And I think from my perspective, I realize I'm definitely not an expert in the field, but I'm like, you just have to wake up and do something that kind of breaks that cycle. And it's the same with drug, it's kind of the same as hitting that realization with drugs that you are at rock bottom. You know, I don't know what, the thing that I often think that's hard about drug addicts and probably depression as well is, like, I don't know how I can explain to anybody that there was just a night where I'd been kicked out of my wife. My wife kicked me out of her house. My parents weren't letting me live with them. I was in my buddy's truck. We're smoking OxyContin. And I literally just smoked some OxyContin, and I just, like, put it down. I was like, dude, I'm the biggest fucking loser. Like, I have kids at home. and I'm hanging out with this kid that's like 5 years younger than me. He's fresh out of high school, and I'm just smoking. You know, I'm doing drugs. My wife has zero money to go buy groceries. We had zero money, and I literally looked at my buddy, and I was just like, tomorrow, I'm gonna leave, and you're not gonna see me. And I've talked to him a few times since, but it's been, you know, I mean, we're talking over 16 years. I've probably talked to him 3 or 4 times. He's checked in on me, or I've checked on him, and I just went a different way. Like I just knew in that instant, like I was done with that life. It was really weird because I tried to quit, and something just hit that night, and I was just like, I'm done. This is not who I was supposed to be. And I still had the addiction, but I just woke up the next morning and started trying to break that cycle. I went and, you know, I begged my mom to let me come stay with her. I'm like, Mom, like, I have no one else to let me stay with him. I promise I'm done this time. And she's like, okay, I'll give you one more chance, you know? And I'm like, you know, I know I'm sure in her head, she's like, yeah, right.
Yeah,
but
right.
I think with my point of this, I think with depression, it's the same thing. It's like, get up and go to the gym, you know, get up and, I don't know, read a different book than what you've been reading, go watch some videos somewhere online that are uplifting versus doing whatever it is that you're staying in that cycle of, you know, of just kind of the loop of depression or addiction. It's like you have to start making changes that lead you a different direction. And I don't think it has to be anything drastic. I don't think you have to, you know, become Tony Robbins overnight, but
it's like how can you get him to start seeing the world as a glass of water that's half full and not half empty, or pretty much empty?
Yeah.
Because in depression, I mean, that's all they're seeing, and then of course, then they're starting to, that's their energies going towards that, and then they're starting to, what's the word I'm looking for, where they're attracting that negative.
You're literally placeboing negativity into your life.
And so they're finding it in every aspect of their life, right? Whereas you can help them the best you can, and, you know, like help them to do something different music, different routine, different friends. I mean, it's tough though.
Yeah,
I haven't had to go through that. So
yeah, I think friends is a huge part of it too.
Yeah.
Like, if you're unhappy, I would check your circle of influence. If you're probably hanging out with a bunch of unhappy people.
Bunch of people that complain and bitch and looking for the bad in the world and talk about others, rather than people in other circles that are uplifting and supporting each other and just trying to do the best they can.
Yeah. Be positive.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Well, Greg, thank you for coming in
course.
Hopping on the podcast. Thank you, Jason, for being here. Suicide is not the answer. I think it's a good way to end the podcast. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Be positive and confident in all that you do. And most importantly, go be abundant. See you soon.